Hello and welcome to this Fotospeed video with me, Tim Jones. Now, we've got a little bit of a different talk today, I suppose, with Rachael Talibart here, who's come in very kindly today and spent some time with us. And you may have watched the other videos we did with Rachael about lovely books she makes, and also an interview type piece where we talked about your career, basically, and moving on from things and new work and things like that, as well as printing and such. But we wanted to talk a little bit about a subject that's quite of interest to me, as well as hopefully a lot of you out there, how Rachael kind of sells her work through the gallery system, and also achieved gallery representation, I suppose, because I suppose that's where we're all trying to get to as artists, maybe, as kind of they do a lot of the legwork for you in some respects, and then it's a 50-50, I suppose, isn't it? It's kind of
it does depend. Depends on the gallery and the relationship you have with them. These days, the idea of a photographer or any artist really who just creates in their atelier somewhere and the galleries do all the work for them is a myth. Well, maybe it's not. Maybe there's some super stars out there who are like that, but I can't think who. We all have to do some of our own marketing, not just the galleries. But yes, in theory, the galleries should be marketing your work to their clients. Well, I've got representation in North America, Germany, which covers all of Europe for me, and the UK. I don't have gallery representation beyond those, but of course they can ship worldwide, and they do.
And how did you go about getting that gallery representation? Did you go to them, or did they come to you, or was it kind of starting off in the UK, I assume, or did you get US?
Actually, well, way back when, I think I mentioned in an earlier video that I did a crazy thing in 2015 and did my first solo show. And that was in a local gallery in Surrey, in the town where I live. And they did then carry some of my work in their space after the show was over. So I suppose in a way that was a sort of representation, unofficial representation. They then moved to another area and ultimately retired. So that stopped. But so if that was representation, then it was UK first. But then after that, the next gallery thing to happen was an American gallery, Sohn Fine Art in Massachusetts, actually got in touch with me. And that was the first, what I would call actually official representation that I got. And they would continue to represent me exclusively in the USA. Obviously they ship worldwide, but they're the only gallery in the USA representing me at the moment.
Do you know how they came across you?
I do. Instagram. So there we go. It's still useful. But of course, this was many years ago. Would they still now? I don't know.
I'm not sure.
No, me neither. Instagram has changed.
It used to be. Well, one was saying a while ago, it's kind of within the space of...
In the last 3 years, really. 3 to 4 years. They changed the algorithm, and there was definitely a change in February 2020 that was detrimental to my work, and then it got worse in 2021. It's just got better this year, but still not amazing. But in the sort of heady pre-virus days, that Instagram was a great place for stills photographers. So they got in touch and said, we're doing a group show. Would you like to put some work into it? And I said, yes. And if you feel happy with it, would you consider representing me after that going forward generally? And they said yes. So quite quickly, because the work did go well, they gave me my second solo show. And I've now had 2 solo shows in that gallery. And it's been good. It's a good market, America, for fine art landscape photography.
Definitely. I think it's, well, I mean, we've discussed throughout the day that in this country it seems there's very much a divide between photography and the so-called fine arts, I suppose, painting and things like that, the traditional.
It can
types.
seem that way, and it's even more complicated than that because even if you go back to pre-photography times, the landscape as a subject, or paintings of the landscape, it was looked down on as a lower genre than portraiture, for example. So you throw into the mix photography as well. And it's always been difficult for people. I'm not really a landscape photographer, but I kind of am. People working in that area to have their work accepted as art. And I think it's still a struggle in this country. And most photography in galleries is more conceptual.
Yeah. And I think we can see that in organisations in this country. There is a divide between that as well. We won't name it, but there's that big divide between the conceptual and the technical.
Yes. Or I think between the conceptual and the more figurative, I guess, but also nature photography generally, I think struggles still in this country to be accepted as an art form. So that's landscape, wildlife, seascape, all of that sort of thing. And I think that's a challenge. Still life is more likely to be valued, still life photography. It doesn't mean there isn't a market out there. There is. So I'm represented by a gallery in the UK. Well, two, but one is not a bricks and mortar gallery anymore, which is the Bosham Gallery. Okay. But I'm also represented by Taylor Jones and Son in Deal in Kent, which has become something of a destination gallery. So people will go to Deal to go to that gallery. And they have been representing my work for several years now.
And did they come to you again as well?
They did, but this time through a connection. I have a friend who lives in Deal, has bought work from that gallery. The gallery owner was chatting, said, looking for new work. She said, well, I know this seascape photographer. Deal's a coastal town. Do you think it would be the right sort of thing? So he then did an exhibition of 3 artists, photographer, me, with sirens, a printmaker and a painter. But all 3 were doing work with a nautical related theme. And my work sold out. So that was really, really good. And then on the back of that, he said, right, we'll represent you going forward. And it's been a nice relationship and a good place to have my work. I get a lot of what's called DFLs, down from London's.
Okay.
So it's a good market down there. And then the last gallery to come on board with what I call representation is a gallery in Germany called Taunus Photo Gallery. And I first started, again, the owner of that gallery contacted me during lockdown and we chatted on the phone and got on very well. And then it was a new gallery he was opening. Really difficult time to be opening a new gallery, but how could he know? And then eventually, once the gallery was going, he got in touch and exhibited my work in a solo show 2 years ago. And then last year sold quite a few prints for me. And it's really good to have a gallery on the continent because of Brexit. It's quite hard shipping stuff from the UK. So he can actually handle all European sales for me, which is very nice. Yeah,
it's nice to have a gallery that also has the facility to print.
Yes, he doesn't actually. The American gallery does print, but I am using a very good specialist fine art printer in Germany whenever we need a print. So it all works quite well, and there's less carbon footprint without having to ship things from me to the gallery to be shipped on to someone else, which is nice.
So with all these, there's obviously going to be agreements and legal agreements in most cases.
Yes, contracts.
Well. Is there anything to look out for in those?
Yes.
Also the commission, I suppose, is the big one, isn't it?
Yeah. Right. Well, normally, if they work on commission only, you should expect something in the region of 50%.
Yes.
So you get 50% of the gross retail price, but out of that you've paid for the printing and for the framing, which can be quite a big chunk of money. So that brings us on to a couple of other things. We should talk about how we price our work.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of people ask me about that. So I know there's an interest out there. Let's come back to that though, because I'll finish this thought. So I don't, you hear a lot of bad things said about the gallery 50%. I don't resent it at all, because galleries have to run a really expensive space. You know, if they're a bricks and mortar gallery, for sure. They have to employ people. They have all the outgoings and overheads to do with that. In addition, depending on the jurisdiction, but if it's UK, they have to pay VAT on the gross retail price.
Yes.
And they pay that out of their share. So obviously they can set that off against VAT that they pay when they buy stuff. But still, overall, they're accounting for more VAT for having sold stuff than. So do you see what I mean? Actually, I don't think it's fair to criticise galleries for taking 50%. Not every gallery does. Some will take 40%, 45%. Some, I did have one gallery I've worked with where there's 50%, but they take the cost of production off first and give you that, and then split it after that, which is much fairer to the artist. So there are nuances and wrinkles around it with each gallery, but 50% is pretty standard sort of zone to be in. If you have to pay them for representation, which is another model out there that I've never done, they should then take a much smaller percentage on commission. The reason I've never done it is because I think if they've already been largely paid just to represent you, are they going to be really hungry to make sales?
Yes, I was going to say.
That worries me.
Yeah, they might just disappear.
Or just not try very hard. Because they're making all their money from the sums the artists are paying them to be represented. And it's a model that exists a lot in the USA. I'm often still, even now, emailed by galleries, particularly in New York. There's one I'm thinking of in particular, I won't say which, that just sends out these blanket emails to me, to lots of different photographers saying, we'll represent you. And then you look into the small print and they want you to pay them to represent you. There's no guarantee they'll sell anything.
You imagine it's not cheap either.
No, absolutely not.
It's not going to be.
No,
£100
exactly. I mean, there's a gallery in London, again, I won't say which, that does this, that works on that model. For me, I don't think that's the right move. So I think there is a downside to paying people to represent you.
There's no incentive for them. So they've got your money.
Exactly. But then I say that from a position of strength, having gallery representation. If I didn't have any, maybe I would think that was a way to start, because you can put on your website that you're represented by a gallery. That makes you have more gravitas straight away. But I don't know if it will bring in other galleries, because they will know. They will read that. They will know what sort of a deal you have, because they all know what each other is doing. So I'm wary of that.
Yeah, there's kind of that thing in everything, isn't there?
Yes.
In the industry and things.
Yeah.
You think it's a shortcut. Sometimes it is.
And it's an expensive choice.
Yeah, it's a test, effectively. And it's expensive to try that as well.
And also I found, like, these galleries that are emailing, now I often get clients who are maybe at a really early stage in their photography saying, oh, I've had an email from this gallery and I've just had one too. So they are absolutely just blanketing people they've come across on Instagram or wherever. So now they're not choosing your work because they like the work. They're choosing your work because you're going to pay them. And they've sent hundreds.
As well, these spam emails that say, oh, I really love your work, blah, blah, blah. And say, oh, thank you. Because you respond to everything on Instagram.
Oh, the NFT thing.
Oh, the NFT.
Don't get me started.
But the galleries will do this, but they'll come into it. They're very clever when they do it, because they come into you as like a genuine other artist and things interested. So you reply, well, thank you very much. It means a lot to me, and blah, blah, and all that kind of stuff you do. And then they come back to you, have you ever thought about gallery representation? And you might, the first one usually gets you, because you go, oh yeah, that'd be the dream or whatever. And And then they come back, oh yeah, well, we're really looking for artists and really love your work and blah, blah, and all this. Oh, it's only X amount. Yeah. Delete.
Yes. I think so, sadly.
But yes, and then the whole NFT thing as well. It's just I want to buy this, and it's going to be, I'm going to give you 10,000 crypto coins for this. And
but you've got to pay the gas fee first, and that's several hundred.
That's as much as you're getting.
And there's no guarantee of a sale. Anyway, it is what it is. But I much prefer, I like working with galleries who want to work with me because they like my work.
Yeah.
Not because I'm paying them.
Because they're going to have more interest in pushing it for you.
They're also going to do a better job because if they like it, they've probably made some effort to understand it and have an idea of what it's about. And I think that's a huge part of what galleries need to do. Mm-hmm. So the gallery in Germany, David Mark is the owner. He loves telling stories. He's an actor as well. So he loves that whole sharing and telling stories. And he's really interested in the stories behind the pictures and the myths behind my waves and everything. So now when people come into his gallery, he's enthused and he's sharing these stories and he's engaging people's interest. And I think that's what you're looking for in a gallery owner.
Yeah, no, definitely. You want someone who's going to, be interested in what you do. Basically.
Exactly.
It's always easier. Now, you probably bring us nicely onto pricing as well. Because you keep a worldwide
I have to keep a price list to which all the galleries must adhere because it's catastrophic if you get a pricing war with your work because it's going to drive it down, the prices down, and that's not what you want. So all of the galleries agree. I keep a price list in Dropbox that they all have access to, and that has to stay. But the prices were actually set for me by that first gallery in the USA. Okay, So they said, your work is too cheap, which is what galleries will always say.
Most artists probably fall into that as well.
Yes, absolutely. We do. We're our own worst enemies. We undervalue our own work, and it's a kind of a modesty thing.
If you think it's too much, it's probably right.
Yeah, I think so.
Honest, and you should probably add a little bit more.
Yeah. I think as a bare starting point, I get asked this question so much by clients. As a bare minimum starting point, your price should be 4 times the cost of production. Okay. Yeah. So if you're, let's say you've printed and framed a piece and that cost you £150, then you should be selling the work for £600. Yeah. Because if you do want a gallery to find you, they're not going to be interested in work that isn't priced at a point where they can make their 50%.
That's true.
If they take £300, you've only got 300 left and you've paid 150. This is not that's a minimum scenario. Do you see what I mean? If you say, right, it's cost me £150, so I'll charge 200. Yeah. It's not enough. And anyway, the £150 is just the physical cost of the print and the frame media, right? What about the fuel it cost you to drive to that place? Or if you took it on a workshop on holiday, the flights? What about everything else? The camera? What price do you set on all your years of experience that's taken you to get to the point where you could make that beautiful photograph?
All the workshops you've been on, all the courses you've done.
Yeah, or just all the hours you've spent standing in the pouring rain on a beach waiting for the light, or up a mountain, or wherever it is you go. And it's a really hard lesson to learn because we all have imposter syndrome going on all the time, don't we? It doesn't matter how successful you are, you still have that going on. But we have to price our work more highly. I've been to exhibitions. I've exhibited in group exhibitions with photographers who are astonishingly selling A3 prints for 50 quid.
Yeah. Probably in amount as well.
Oh yeah, framed.
Yeah.
And it's extraordinary. They'll make a £5 on that. And all they're doing is making the public think, oh, well, they can't be very good. They must be beginners because their work's so cheap. So I think it's not greed. It comes across as greed if your work's expensive, but it shouldn't. It's actually a way of saying, yeah, I worked really hard for this. I've done a good job. I worked that. I really crafted this. and it's valuable.
And you're worth, that piece is worth that money.
Yeah.
As the artist, you are worth that as well.
Yes, exactly.
And it does work because people then go, ooh.
Exactly. I'd rather not sell a print for £5,000 than not sell one for 50.
Yes.
There is an argument which I don't dispute, that is it nice to make your work only available to rich people? Shouldn't you maybe think about being more democratic? And that appeals to me. You know my politics, that would appeal to me.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that I have this small number of pictures that are available in a far more affordable open edition at A3 plus size. We don't sell that much.
No.
Because it's not what people want. They want to know they're buying quality, and they expect to pay a price that fits that. And you don't sell high volume at those prices. You don't expect to. You'd hope to sell high volume if you're selling them for 50 quid each, because otherwise you're going to make no money. When you're selling prints for a 5-figure sum, which is what some of my work sells for, you're not going to sell them every week. But you'll sell a few others maybe. Yeah. But, the 5-figure sum is not every week. But when it comes, it's very nice. And it does still come.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah. And I suppose that's with the galleries helping as well.
Oh,
possibly
absolutely.
Lists and things like that. But it is achievable if you're on your own as well.
It is. It is. You have to be courage. You have to have courage though.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of work, but also most of the inquiries you get, people will have no clue. And they will, they'll like the picture and they'll say, oh, I'd like to buy a print. And you quote and they're, how much? Of course, they don't say that to you. You just never hear from them again. You get no reply. And that after a while, when you've had 10 in a row like that, you'll start to doubt yourself.
Yeah, naturally, I suppose, and quite rightly in some respects. You just would. Everyone would.
But as you're never going to get rich selling your prints for 50 quid, why bother? Better not to sell them at all than to give them away. Any fool can give their stuff away.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And, it happens in just photography in general, in industry as well. I think pricing is always a thing. I suppose you definitely get asked about pricing.
Oh, I get asked about pricing all the time,
and I do as well. And it's hard. It's hard for me. I suppose it's still hard for you in some respects.
It's really hard. It's hard for the galleries. There is no. You don't sort of keep selling our art and one day perfectly understand pricing because the market keeps shifting as well. And
I suppose the piece on the wall is only worth what someone's willing to pay for it. So
exactly.
It's that as well. And then, of course, you work in editions, so every time someone buys it, the price goes up a little bit and up a little bit.
So the first 5 in an edition of 12 are at base cost.
Okay, yeah.
So you're kind of rewarding the buyer for trusting or for seeing the value of that piece when it's new. But then once those 5 are gone, then the price starts to go up because we're building scarcity into the model now. The person who buys 12 of 12 will pay more than the person who bought 1 of 12. People who buy the APs, which we save till the end, the 2 APs, I keep 1 for me, they pay even more. But there are some people out there, well, I think we said this earlier, who only collect APs. There are some people out there who will only collect 12 of 12, the last in an edition. Okay. Collectors are interesting. They all have their own different criteria. And they have lots of money. And if they love your work, if they really love it, they will pay the price. And that's what you're waiting for. You're waiting for that person who loves your work so much that they will say, how much? And then they still buy it. Yeah. That's the ideal point to be on.
Yeah. So I suppose the idea with the editions is the first 5 people who buy those, they know, hopefully, when you sell 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, that they've got value already built into that work. Someone else has paid more for it, so it's worth that price.
And I mean, to be fair, very few people who buy photographs these days, from people I know anyway, and from me, are hoping to make money. They buy the picture because they love it, but they are happy to pay the price for it, not because they expect it to increase in value. They're not planning to sell it. They just love it. And that's what it should be, really.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose with the representation, it's nice to have them approach you, but you can approach these galleries as well, kind of show your work to them. It's the same as putting it up on Instagram, I suppose, and kind of looking, and playing the algorithm game to try and get it in front of these people. But sometimes, perhaps, I don't know, cold calling would probably be, I might perhaps send an email or with some pictures on, or give them a call, possibly. I wouldn't probably kind of just walk in with a portfolio. But sometimes I do know people that do that as well. And
yeah, me too. So I've never successfully approached a gallery.
No.
Last year I thought, Rachael, just try. What's the worst that can happen? Because I would quite like to get another gallery on board. I quite like one that goes to art fairs. The American one does, but the UK one does not. It'd be nice to have one that goes to art fairs, just because it gets your work out in front of more people. So I emailed. Well, you go on the website first, and if on the website they say that they are not accepting unsolicited applications, then believe that. I just think it's silly. They clearly just don't want. They're not going to read it. They're not going to look at your work.
They might even just delete it.
Yeah, I think they probably do. But these galleries that I approached didn't, and they were galleries I was following on social media. So I approached a couple on the continent and a couple in the UK, 4 in total, I think. 3 of them never replied to me at all. And that is standard. And bear in mind that I'm not unknown. So I'm I've already got galleries. I've got a reputation. I've got a long list of publications on my website, serious publications. So they didn't get back to me. The last gallery did, and I respect them enormously for that. And they said, we really do love your work. It would be a good fit in the gallery, but we should just tell you this is a really tough time for galleries. And it's hard enough for us to get the work of our existing artists out there and marketed and sold. And we think, in fairness to them, we should continue to concentrate our efforts on those we already represent. Now, I replied and thanked them for that, because I thought that was a really professional, it's a professional response. It rang true. Also was helpful information, because it gave me an idea of what it's like out there for galleries now. It's really tough. Loads are closing. Galleries that I might have had on a list in my head to approach or visit, now I go and they're done. They're gone, because it is really, really tough at the moment because of the state of the world, the global economy, post-COVID, and post a lot of other things that are going on. So fair enough. I think if you've got a really thick skin, I'm not that good actually, but I've got 1 or 2 clients I know who are tougher than I. Yes. And if you can take constant rejection, then you should just go for it and just email people with bespoke emails, though, not just some clearly standard thing that you're just whacking out, and see what happens, because you might be lucky.
Some of them even have submission.
Some of them do. Not many.
Ones, but
not many. But give it a go, but be resilient. They used to say, I used to write. I did once get a story published, and a long time ago. But they say you're not a writer until you can paper your study walls with rejection slips, which of course now they're all electronic. But when I was writing short stories, they were paper. And I think that's the same with gallery representation.
It's a numbers game.
I think it's just keep plugging away if it means that much to you.
You never know. Someone might open that email one day.
I frankly think that it's better to email them than to walk in and you're in their selling space and you're in their way. And the one person I came across gave the advice to go to art fairs and go around and talk to all of the different galleries' stands. If you've ever been to an art fair, they have a small space. They're competing with a lot of other galleries to try and show the work. the last thing they need is a wannabe photographer standing in front of them with a portfolio trying to show them their work. I think it's not the best move.
It's not the place.
I think just be sensitive, you know, to what's likely to get in their way, because they're just trying to make money like everyone else. Do your homework. If there's a gallery that already, for me, if there's a gallery that already represents a wave photographer, really stupid for me to approach them and say, would you like to represent a wave photographer? Because they already do. So, but equally, if it's a gallery that only has conceptual art, there's no point in me going in there. They'll have no room for a nature photographer. Equally, if it's a gallery that's only selling, and there's a sort of gallery out there that just sells, there's lots of them, maybe even the majority, that are selling work by past photographers, prints by Edward Weston or Ansel Adams or Beacon of Cowles or whatever. They're not going to be interested in a contemporary photographer. That's not their business model. It's much easier to sell prints of works by already famous photographers than it is to sell prints by aspirational photographers, and they won't be interested in the latter. So do your homework. I would strongly suggest investigate the gallery first, see if your work fits without duplicating what they've already got, and check that they are likely to want to show your sort of photography on the walls before you waste their time and yours.
Definitely. Well, I think that's probably a great place to end there on that note. Really good advice. I'm gonna be taking some of it as well, hopefully as well. But thank you again, Rachael, for coming in today.
Oh, my pleasure.
It's been great. We've had a good chat, haven't we?
Yeah, we have.
So, as always, don't forget to subscribe to the Fotospeed YouTube channel and sign up to our newsletter. But also, don't forget to visit Rachael's website, which I'll put in the description below, and sign up to her newsletter as well and look at all her amazing work on there. And also, Rachael has a big list of all the galleries you have on there, don't you, who sell your Rachael's work as well, and you can look at these amazing books and also the prints as well. So
thank you.
Well, on that note, though, we will say goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.